Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Nancy Morrow Howell, and I'm the director of the Harvey A. Friedman Center for Aging at the Institute of Public Health at Washington University. I'm so glad you're joining us today for our second annual Mark S. Wrighton Graduate Student Research Award on Aging. This is our 3MT competition to select our winners of this award this year. This is only the second time we've done this. Last year, we were able to have the competition in person, but then and select winners. Our Friedman lecture was canceled because of the beginning of the pandemic, and we weren't able to have the second part, which is recognizing people at our Friedman lecture. But this year, we will select our winner tonight, and we have the Friedman lecture online, so we won't be canceled again, and the winners will be able to present there as well. This award was established to honor Chancellor Emeritus Mark Wrighton, and it was established in his honor because he established the Center for Aging during his chancellorship, and he was a tireless advocate for research and education on older adults and aging society across all discipline. I'm so pleased that the Chancellor Emeritus Wrighton is with us on the webinar today to take part in the activities and to say a word at the end after we select our winners. Want to thank our sponsors, the Harvey A. and Doris May Hacker Friedman Fund that is administered by the Barnes Jewish Hospital Foundation is to thank for these prizes. And I also would like to acknowledge Lynn Hamilton, the family representative, who is with us today. So with that, I am going to turn this over to Natalie Galusha. Natalie is the manager of the Center for Aging and is making this whole thing happen. And she's going to tell you about the origins of the 3MT competition and how this is going to come down this afternoon. Thank you, and Natalie?
Thank you, Nancy. Okay, so as Nancy said, thank you so much for joining us today for our second 3-minute thesis competition. We're really looking forward to it. Just a bit of a background of what exactly a 3MT is in case you're not familiar with it. So this is actually a competition that was developed by the University of Queensland. And so that's why you're seeing, you'll see all of the branding around the actual 3MT competition, that they give other universities permission to use this branding and use this competition format in order to do different things, such as acknowledge some of the different research that's going on across the universities with their PhD students, and also to be able to recognize and acknowledge them through types of award programs like we're doing today. So these are actually international competitions. This is just a little bit of a snapshot of different countries all over the world that are doing very similar things with their graduate and PhD students as well. And so part of the competition includes our judging panel, and they are the ones that will actually be judging the competitors for our Judges' Choice winner. And today we have 4 judges on our panel. First is David Belota. He is a professor in psychological and brain sciences and neurology in the cognitive psychology lab. Madeline Franklin, who is the executive director of STL Village, one of our community partners that helps older adults to age in place. And then Krista Mulder, who is the executive director of the Charles F. and Joanne Knight Alzheimer's Disease Research Center here at Washington University. And then we also have with us Peter Sun, who is a PhD candidate himself at the Brown School of Social Work. So thank you to all of our judges for being here and helping us with this competition today. So a little bit more about the rules and what we'll be seeing through this competition. So you'll see that each of the presenters will have just 3 minutes, as the competition states, to talk about their thesis, and they'll be showing one static PowerPoint slide. They're not able to use any other electronic media or props, and the presentations will be spoken word. The presentations aren't going to commence from a stage this year, as you'll see. They're each in their own homes talking to us over Zoom. And then, as it says there at the end, the decision will be made by the judging panel for the judge's choice, the judging panel. All right, so the criteria, just to give you a little bit idea of what the judges will be looking for as the presenters are making their presentations, there's two main categories. The first is on comprehension and content. So they're looking at really overall, are the presenters able to talk about their research in layman's terms? Are they keeping it basic? Is it easy for everyone in the audience to understand? That's kind of the main goal of the comprehension and content part of it. And then the second part is engagement and communication, and exactly how they're able to portray their research, and making sure, again, that people are understanding and engaging in what is being said. So a little bit about the prizes. So as Nancy said, our Judge's Choice winner will actually receive $1,000, and then our People's Choice Award will be $500. And the awardees will again be recognized at our annual Friedman Lecture and Awards, which is going to take place on Zoom as well on April 14th, 2021. And we will be talking a little bit more about that in more details at the end. So a little bit of how today's event is going to work now that we've learned a little bit about the competition itself. We are going to have 5 presenters, 5 presentations, and each of them will have their 3 minutes, and I'll be introducing each of them as they're getting started. And then we'll take some time for the People's Choice voting. So when it comes time for that, there will be a link that will be in the chat, which I'll go over in just a second, for you to be able to vote for your the two top choices of which presentations you thought were best. And then we'll take a quick break in order to kind of help tally up some of those, and then also move our judges over into their deliberation area where they're going to discuss the results of their judging. And during that time, we'll have an audience Q&A with the presenters, and then we'll be announcing the winners. So in order to facilitate the Q&A with the presenters and then also be able to find the link for the People's Choice voting, you'll be using the chat function through Zoom. So in case you aren't familiar with that, if you hover your mouse to the bottom of your screen, there should be a little toolbar that pops up, and you should see a link that says, a little button at the bottom that says chat. If you're not seeing that, there might be a button to the far right that says more. And if you click that, you should see there where it says chat. Alternatively, you can also use the Q&A. So that similar in the main menu at the bottom there, there's also a button for Q&A, and you can type any questions in there. And feel free to type these questions in anytime throughout the presentations. You don't have to wait until the end in the actual Q&A time. You can put them in as they come to you, and then we'll help to moderate that at the end. So, all right, we are going to go ahead and get started. Our first presenter today is Meghan McDarby, and she is in psychological and brain sciences, and she will be talking about the effectiveness of question prompt list use during first-time palliative care outpatient appointments. So Meghan, we're going to turn it over to you, and once you start talking, your 3 minutes will begin.
Thanks, Natalie. The first appointment with a new doctor could be scary for any older adult. But an older adult's first palliative care appointment is an entirely different ball of wax. Palliative care is a type of supportive medical care for patients with a life-limiting illness like cancer or kidney failure. And even though palliative care is a great type of medical care because it helps support patients with symptom management and it can provide emotional and spiritual support, a lot of people don't understand what palliative care is and even think that it means that they're at the end of life. As a result, these appointments can be pretty scary for older adults. One way, though, to help patients feel more prepared for these palliative care appointments and less nervous about them is to give them some information in advance of their appointment that might help them know what questions would be useful to ask during their appointment. To that end, my dissertation examines the use of a question prompt list tool, which is exactly what it sounds like. It's a list of questions that patients get in advance of their first palliative care appointment that gives them some information about what questions would be useful to ask during that appointment. The idea, or my working hypothesis based on previous research, is that if older adult patients have a list of questions that would be useful to ask during this appointment, that it would A, help them feel more prepared for the appointment, which might encourage their participation in the appointment, and B, help them feel less anxious about attending this palliative care appointment for the first time. In order to answer my research question, I'll randomly assign half of the participants in my sample to receive the question prompt list before their palliative care appointment. The other half of patients in my sample will not receive the palliative care question prompt list before their appointment. I will audio record all of the appointments to understand how much patients participate in the appointment and how many questions they ask. I'll also be asking all patients pre-appointment and post-appointment questions about their anxiety levels to understand whether patients who get this question list feel less anxious at the end of their appointment. My dissertation data collection is ongoing, but here's what I know so far. Generally, patients who get the question prompt list say that it's helpful to them. Unfortunately, my hypothesis about anxiety seems to not be panning out as I expected, such that patients don't necessarily feel less anxious if they have the question prompt list. And so far, my understanding of this finding is that patients are anxious about a lot of other things before their first palliative care appointment. My ongoing goal as a researcher is to help support patients with serious illness and their family members, and I hope that my dissertation findings do ultimately support this research goal. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much, Megan. And just a little bit more about Megan, and we put in the chat the bios, but I also just wanted to give a bit more detail about our speakers, which I didn't do right before she spoke. But as you probably learned just through Megan's research, she is a fifth-year graduate student in Dr. Brian Carpenter's clinical geropsychology laboratory, and her primary research interests include enhancing end-of-life decision-making among older adults and improving communication about end-of-life care preferences among older adults, their caregivers, and healthcare providers. And she is broadly interested in ways to increase quality of end-of-life care by facilitating earlier access to palliative care services and by optimizing psychological care at end of life. So thank you very much, Megan. Okay, next we have Chengran Yang. He is with the School of Medicine in the Department of Psychiatry. And a little bit more about Chengran. He is currently, as I just mentioned, a graduate student, but of human and statistical genetics in the PhD program from the Division of Biology and Biomedical Sciences. Chengran is working with Dr. Carlos Cruchaga from the Department of Psychiatry. And Chengran's thesis, as you'll hear in just a minute, is to identify the protein quantitative trait loci in multiple tissues from a cohort of Alzheimer's disease patients and cognitive healthy controls. So Chengran, I am going to turn it over to you, and your time will start with your 3 minutes.
All right, thanks, Natalie. So Alzheimer's disease, AD, is a neurodegenerative disease affecting more than 5 million people in the United States till the end of last year, 2020. Even this disease has been studied for decades. There's no effective treatment or cure to even slowing down the disease progression. And human geneticists normally use this two-component framework by directly connecting genetic variants with disease risk to identify the risk-associated variants. However, through the years, scientists switched to this three-component framework by inserting an intermediate trait to link the old components. And this third intermediate trait I'm going to talk about for my thesis is the protein level. Specifically for AD field, protein has been used, several proteins have been used for biomarkers in terms of AD diagnosis. There are two well-known or well-validated protein biomarkers in the field. One is A-beta-42, the other one is tau. And both proteins are collected from cerebrospinal fluid, or CSF. However, CSF is not most convenient tissue. So it is still possible to identify novel protein as biomarkers from CSF or even in blood, either plasma or serum. And with the recent advancement of both the proteomic profiling technologies, we now could profile 1,000 proteins from one sample, and also the advancement about high computing facilities, which now we could compute over millions of protein variant pairs in terms of association tests. And that leads to this aim one of my thesis, is to identify significant pQTLs across over 1,000 proteins using all these 3 tissues from a cohort from Knight Alzheimer's Disease Research Center here at WashU. And the 3 tissues are CSF, plasma, and brain. For brain, because AD is also a brain-related disease. And we call the pQTL or protein variant pairs after integrating the protein readout and the genetic variants. So after we derive these proteins with significant pQTLs, we want to further infer the protein in the pathogenesis of AD risk. And that's my second aim. So specifically, we want to ask this question, whether the protein with the pQTL could increase or decrease the AD risk. And for example, in this slide, I highlight this one protein called plasma CD33, and it increased the AD risk from our data. And we find 10 proteins within each tissue for this thesis. And that's all what I find. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. Okay, our next presenter is Audrey Keleman, and she is also with the School of Medicine, but in the program in Occupational Therapy. And she will be presenting falls, a marker of preclinical Alzheimer's disease. And just a little bit more about Audrey. So Audrey is an occupational therapist and then also a PhD student, as we've mentioned. And she is interested in aging in place and fall prevention, particularly among older adults with mild dementia. So we will go ahead and turn it over to you, Audrey, and your time will start when you begin speaking.
Thank you, Natalie. A few weeks ago, my sister called. She broke the news my mom fell. My stomach dropped. I study falls, and I'm well aware they're the leading cause of injury, injury-related mortality, and premature nursing home placement among older adults. But what had me even more concerned is I study falls in very early Alzheimer's disease. As my mom is currently caring for my grandma with Alzheimer's disease, I feared this fall could be a sign of something greater. 1 in 4 older adults falls each year, but this risk nearly triples for those with Alzheimer's disease, including those in the preclinical stage. Preclinical Alzheimer's disease is a clinically silent period of up to 20 years when changes such as amyloid and tau proteins are accumulating in the brain. These changes are currently only detectable through medical tests, such as through PET images shown here along the progression to symptomatic Alzheimer's disease. First, amyloid plaques accumulate in the brain up to 20 years before memory symptoms appear. Next, tau tangles accumulate up to 10 years before memory symptoms. When these plaques and tangles are present in the brain, neurons can't function properly and begin to die. This neurodegeneration or shrinking of the brain begins to occur up to 5 years before memory symptoms. While fall prevention interventions exist, they are still not very effective among people with Alzheimer's disease. This begs the question, are falls for people with Alzheimer's disease different than those without the disease? To solve this huge public health crisis, we want to better understand what is causing these falls and also learn when they occur in the progression to symptomatic Alzheimer's disease. These answers could help on 2 major fronts. First, falls could be a behavioral indicator of preclinical Alzheimer's disease and identify people who may benefit from further neurological testing during this clinically silent period. And second, knowing what is causing these falls and when they occur along this timeline may help us develop targeted and effective fall prevention interventions for this population. So far, we've examined falls and brain images among a group of 80 older adults with or without preclinical Alzheimer's disease for 1 year. We found that people who fell had smaller brain volumes compared to those who did not fall. This suggests falls may be associated with neurodegeneration. Our next steps include investigating why neurodegeneration may be associated with falls. We hypothesize it may affect sensation, motor function, and attention to how we're navigating the environment throughout our day. Subtle changes that may be the difference between my mom walking in her living room every day and not falling, and one day falling and breaking her wrist. While I panicked with the news of my mom's fall and the potential for it to be a sign of this disease, I'm hopeful one day soon we'll have a better understanding of these falls so we can intervene earlier and better help not only my mom, but millions of others like her too.
Thank you, Audrey. Next, we have Allison Lahada. Allison earned her doctorate in occupational therapy from Washington University in St. Louis in 2012. And then she returned to WashU to pursue her PhD in 2018. She is currently at the School of Medicine, also in the program in occupational therapy. And her overarching career goal is to help cancer survivors live fulfilling and productive lives. So we are going to hear Allison present on connecting cancer survivors to rehabilitation, supporting their fight for life. So Allison, you are up if you're unmuted. All right, and whenever you're ready.
Thank you. What do you enjoy doing in your daily life? Maybe it's something as simple as meeting a friend for coffee. Now imagine that it takes you twice as long to get ready, which leaves you completely exhausted. You have to have your spouse drive you there for safety reasons. And when you finally arrive, you feel anxious the entire time that your ileostomy bag is going to leak and you'll have bodily fluids all over your clothes. These are all challenges described by older adult cancer survivors in my research. My dissertation research focuses on understanding how daily life participation is impacted among cancer survivors. Concentrating on supporting survivors in their daily lives will help them live fulfilling and productive lives during and after treatment. While curing cancer is the ultimate goal, we also have to focus on what people are truly fighting for in their cancer battle. People are fighting to be able to do what they love and to enjoy the life they've fought so hard to keep. Medical care heavily emphasizes survival, but most patients value preservation of function and cognitive abilities more than survival. Cancer-related disability is widespread, is a major cause of distress, and results in large societal costs. Rehabilitation services, which focus on the prevention and treatment of disability, can effectively address many common cancer-related impairments. However, referral rates to rehabilitation are as low as 1.5% among survivors who express functional impairments. In the first phase of my research, I interviewed 40 survivors about how cancer impacted their daily lives. Survivors described how difficulties with daily activities affected their mental and physical health and relationships. Disease and treatment side effects were often unpredictable and made it difficult for survivors to do what's important to them. One participant stated, "Nearly 100% of what I enjoyed doing before cancer has been taken away." Many may think the hardest part of the cancer battle is getting through treatment, but adapting to life after treatment can be incredibly challenging as well. But remember, this is what people are fighting for, the chance to live and do what they enjoy. Despite the extensive challenges faced by survivors, most had not been referred to rehabilitation. In the second phase of my research, we're administering surveys to 120 survivors about daily activities and their physical, mental, and social health during visits with their oncologists. We'll use survey findings to identify individuals in need of rehabilitation and communicate our recommendation for a referral to their oncologist through the electronic medical record. Connecting survivors with rehabilitation will shift the focus to helping them do what's important to them. As one participant stated, "I would like to be a whole person and be able to participate in just normal activities." Rehabilitation can help accomplish this goal, can mitigate disability and improve quality of life. In turn, early access to rehabilitation can lead to long-term cost savings, decreased disease burden, and even decreased mortality among older adults.
Thank you, Allison. And our final presenter today, it will be Bomin Kim. And Bomin is a doctoral candidate in sustainable urbanism at the Sam Fox School of Design. Her research aims to understand the dynamic relationship between the sociality and the built environment by examining how the shift to e-commerce and the despatialization of social infrastructure affects incidental social ties and perceived isolation in older adults. So we are going to hear from Bomin about her presentation on bridging loneliness with social infrastructure. Bomin, I will turn it over to you.
Loneliness is a complicated emotion. You can feel lonely in a crowded room or feel perfectly content alone. It's highly individual, very subjective, and really difficult to identify. I've been modeling it for the last 2 years, and I still have to remind myself that it's a normal and dynamic emotion we're all biologically hardwired to feel. But when this signal becomes chronic, it becomes more dangerous to our health than smoking 15 cigarettes a day. And even though over 44 million older adults suffer from chronic loneliness in the US, many of us don't know how to best define it. We have this misconception that loneliness occurs when we're disconnected from our closest friends and family. But loneliness is more broadly the difference between how much social connection we want and how much we're getting. Like many of us, I've been spending a lot of time connecting with my family and closest friends during the pandemic because these are the relationships that we naturally gravitate towards. But there's a whole other set of relationships that we haven't been able to Zoom and FaceTime with, what researchers call our bridging social ties. These are our classmates, our coworkers, acquaintances, friendly faces you happen to run into. These are the people you probably don't follow on social media and rarely, if ever, plan to meet, because a lot of our relationships are determined by where we meet them. The physical spaces where we stop to chat and create these relationships are called social infrastructure. These spaces can be public institutions like libraries and parks, but can also be commercial or religious spaces like markets, theaters, and temples. They're all the physical spaces that allow us to congregate, to linger, and to socialize with other people. But even before the pandemic, a lot of our social infrastructure has been degrading and disappearing. The rapid shift from physical to electronic retail like Amazon has been changing our neighborhoods. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. For older adults without time, mobility, access, services like Amazon and Instacart are incredibly convenient. But we also know that e-commerce has significant impacts not only on our local economy, but also the number of encounters we have with our bridging ties. So can we balance convenience and accessibility with sociability? My research asks how commercial retail and the shift to e-commerce affects social ties and perceived isolation in older adults. Is the convenience of Amazon making us lonelier? As we've seen this past year, infrastructure is most visible when it is broken. And although it may not be as obvious as crumbling bridges and roads, the increasing loneliness that we are experiencing in our daily lives exposes how little we've done to create robust social infrastructure. As we prioritize our environment to make more livable cities for older adults, we need to remember that bridging social capital is just as important as the bridges that deliver our daily essentials. Accessibility and convenience might make more livable cities, but they won't necessarily make more connected ones. Thank you.
Thank you, Bomin.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. This was a great series of presentations. All 5 presenters did an excellent job and addressed very interesting issues. The one that caught my eye, as I am now coming up on age 72, I'm wondering about the matter of falls and Alzheimer's disease. Audrey, you presented very interesting work that I hadn't heard about. And I just wonder if any thought has been given to studying the matter of falls with people who have the early onset Alzheimer's disease that are being studied by Dr. Bateman and his colleagues at the Knight Alzheimer's Disease Research Center.
Yeah, thank you for your interest in the question. I don't know of any research specifically in falls with the early onset. I know we have in our lab, we have those very dedicated longitudinal participants from the Knight Alzheimer's Disease Research Center. So we have specific criteria for age just to what we're looking at. So to my knowledge, no one's looking at falls in specifically the early onset, but that would be very interesting also to kind of see what's going on there and if it's similar with the later onset type.
I asked that question because many older people suffer falls, and at least at this point, I haven't thought that this was connected to Alzheimer's disease. And so I wonder if the people with early onset Alzheimer's who are chronologically very young for the most part, I wonder if they are experiencing falls like the older people with Alzheimer's disease.
I can say, I know the statistic for more people in general, there's a much higher risk for Alzheimer. That's with among falls with people with Alzheimer. That was any age with Alzheimer's disease. So just with the preclinical, I only know about the kind of like older adults age, but it should be potentially the same mechanisms because that statistics, any type of Alzheimer's disease sees an increased risk of falls.
Thank you. I'll queue up the next question and let, here comes, let me tell you about a question in the chat that is for Chengran. Has your research identified any proteins? Hold on, I got to get back to the chat. Has your research identified any proteins that decrease risk for Alzheimer's disease?
That's a
Sarah Myers.
Yeah, that's definitely a good question. So we did. The short answer is yes, we did. And I think though I cannot I guess list it I guess the highlight in today's talk, I highlight CD33 more like because we want to highlight this is this protein has been targeted by a drug company already in the clinical phase, and that's also another extended reason we want to highlight this. Also in my manuscript currently under review, and for those proteins that decrease the risk of Alzheimer's disease. Like I said, short answer is yes, we found, but currently I couldn't recall. There's a specific proteins like CD33 has been already put into clinical trial phase.
Thank you.
Just to follow up, Nancy, if I may, in connection with your presentation about biomarkers, if we had a very definitive predictor of Alzheimer's disease, considering that we don't actually have any approach to slowing the progress of the disease, what do you think we should do in terms of communicating with potential Alzheimer's disease victims? Should we tell them?
Yeah, I feel that this is a really great yet challenging questions for, especially I feel for the human geneticist field. No matter Alzheimer's disease, but also other human genetics disease or like rare diseases, right? Like this passing week is I feel it's a rare disease day, and the researchers and also the clinicians or physician scientists ask this question a lot, whether if we find something, should we return back to the victims or the families? To me, since I'm a basic scientist, I cannot, I guess, speak for other like clinicians or physician scientists. But to me, I feel it's definitely I think we definitely need to return this information. If we find something wrong with the family, we need to return to this findings, our findings back to the families or patients.
Thank you, Chengran. I have a couple more questions coming in from the audience. This one is for Bomin. Bomin, can you describe, I got a couple for you. How do you plan to study the relationship between e-commerce and perceived isolation? What kind of methodologies could you use?
So I've started to map sort of the general losses that we see in our commercial spaces, calling it despatialization, but actually the physical changes that we've seen over the course of the adoption of e-commerce. And predominantly the research has been around warehouses coming into cities, but really from more of a local perspective and trying to understand once neighborhoods and older adults are adopting e-commerce, what are the other commercial spaces that are changing with that sort of dynamic relationship? And then from there, it's understanding sort of key social infrastructural spaces that older adults are identifying with. So it's really a combination of large scale mapping, which is a methodology that we do a lot of in the San Fox School, and then tying that to more specific interviews with older adults and community groups to really identify what is important and where are these spaces that we're congregating and really stopping to have these conversations with one another.
Mm-hmm. Let me follow up with another question, Bomin. Along the same lines, is there any evidence that even these brief interactions with delivery people, housekeepers, has positive effects? Have people been able to document that?
There hasn't actually been, and I'd hoped there had been, but I think the biggest issue that we're seeing with mail carriers this way is incredibly outsourced labor these days. It's not just UPS, you start seeing it from people who are picking up flex delivery shifts, and a lot of the time that's a set amount of money that they're given, and they have a set amount of time to do it. And so in order to maximize their profit, they're doing it as quickly as possible, which means chucking the mail at doorsteps, things go mysteriously disappearing, etc. So a lot of the times that sort of tenuous relationship that you have with your mailman is not quite the traditional relationship that you might expect really pre-e-commerce, I would say.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Thank you. I want to make sure we have time to ask some questions to Allison and Meghan. Dr. Wrighton, do you have a question? I have some here, but I want to see if you would like to ask something to Allison or Meghan before I go to the chat room.
Well, yes. In terms of rehabilitation following cancer, I wonder if you have included what would be perhaps psychological rehabilitation as opposed to physical therapy, because I would guess, not having experienced the challenge of cancer myself, I would guess people would worry about recurrence. And I wonder if psychological counseling is an important part of rehabilitation after surviving cancer.
Yes, absolutely. That's a great question. That is actually one of the most common themes that came up in our interviews with the survivors, is the pervasive nature of the mental health issue that they're facing. And it's also a really glaring gap in oncology overall, not just here. So it's definitely a component of a comprehensive rehabilitation team. It doesn't only include physical occupational therapy, but also things like psychological services and social workers and, a whole team of rehabilitation.
Thank you. And to Meghan, if I may, in connection with palliative care, I hear often that for older people, one of the bigger challenges is that the information rate in a visit to the doctor sometimes overwhelms an older person. And I wonder if you consider doing some research to determine whether having an accompanying friend or family member is analogous to the question you raised about whether being prepared with some questions would help in terms of the effectiveness of the visit to the first visit, especially to the doctor?
That's an excellent question. One point that I wish I could have raised in my talk but didn't get to is that misunderstanding of palliative care is actually pervasive across age groups. So I agree with you that in terms of older adults having scaffolding from an adult child during a medical appointment, that would probably be helpful in general. But when it comes to understanding what palliative care is and what one should do during a palliative care appointment, even younger people sometimes still aren't sure how to broach the subject, what the point of the appointment is, and things like that. But I think you're right. It would be interesting if I could put a spin on my study and see if there's a difference between older adult patients who have someone with them versus patients who don't. Thank you for that comment.
I have two questions in the chat. Actually, one's for Meghan and one's for Allison. Meghan, while we are on you, are there differences in anxiety and participation in palliative care depending on country or culture of origin?
That is a great question that I have to say I don't know the answer to. To whoever asked this question, I'll tell you that in general, research on palliative care is in its infancy. So a lot of questions about differences by race, ethnicity, cultural background just haven't been explored yet, which is a shame, but we need more people who are ready to start investigating these topics. But thank you for bringing that up. I think it's a great point.
Yes. And for Allison from the audience, are there any surprising or unexpected findings from your interviews with cancer survivors?
I would say one of the things that was most interesting and surprising to me was really the pervasive nature of the side effects experienced by people with colorectal cancer. That's why I chose to highlight in the talk the challenge with having an ileostomy and how the presence of an ileostomy or a colostomy has really impacted these people's lives in such massive ways. And really, you know, as you were talking about mental health issues earlier, you know, fear of going out into public settings, fear of going to a coffee shop or to a restaurant, and just how it really impacts every aspect of their day. So that was something really striking to me that I learned.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. We have a little bit more time. I'm waiting for a signal from Natalie that we're all finished up with the judging. So we have a little bit more time. Meghan, another question came in from the audience. Do you plan to assess participants' attitudes toward palliative care?
That's also a great question. That's not something that I'm actually assessing rigorously in my study, but when I chat with participants before and after their appointment, it's something that sometimes comes up. So qualitatively, an observation I've made is a lot of the people I talk to before their appointments say things like, I'm still not sure what this appointment is for. I'm still not sure what I'm supposed to do. And then after the appointment, they say, the team was great. I can't wait for them to continue to follow me. So sort of, again, observations I've made, but I'm not collecting it using any specific tools, unfortunately.
Okay, I got one more. Unless Dr. Wrighton, do you want to ask the last question? If no, I will.
I do have a question.
Great.
It's one that I would like to ask to each of the presenters. And you know, you practiced your 3-minute presentation. I'm going to ask you to respond in less than a minute to the following question. Each of you is very early in your life and career. What is it that interested you in pursuing research related to aging? Many people are not interested in older people. And what is it that drew you into a research project related to the aging people?
Terrific. Who's going first? How about I call you out? How about we do order of presentation just to have an order? Meghan.
1 minute or less, this will be tough. I got involved in undergraduate research in aging when I was in college, and I had great mentorship from several gerontologists at the time, and they really inspired me to keep seeking out new research opportunities. They provided a lot of scaffolding, made me excited to stay in the field, and so I really do feel like that's where the passion came from, was seeing other leaders in the field get so excited about these topics.
Thank you, Megan. Chengran?
For me, I feel the straightforward reason is aging got really funded, I guess, to basically compared to other diseases, because I used to work on autism, and I know like the National Institute of Health, they got a National Institute of Mental Health compared to the aging field, National Institute on Aging. But I guess the payroll and the pay line compared to these institutes are suggesting aging is definitely ranks. I'm not discriminating these diseases, but aging definitely got more money compared to other diseases so far in terms of neuropsychiatric field. And my passion is, I guess I always like to do research on neuropsychiatric genetics.
Thank you.
Thank you. Audrey?
I have a lot of reasons. I think mostly in 1 minute, in occupational therapy school, one of our classes showed that pyramid of the generational shift, and they called it the silver tsunami or graying of America, and just how big of a problem this is going to be very soon. And that really stuck with me. And then also I had some research opportunities in occupational therapy school that I was really excited about in aging and aging in place, fall prevention, of course. And then actually on the clinical side of the OT degree, I was on a neurology floor in a hospital, and then I got the one-on-one interaction with that population, and it kind of all came together. So I really, want a research career in aging.
Thanks, Audrey. Allison?
Yeah, so I will say it was not necessarily a natural inclination for me. I actually come from the world of pediatrics as a clinician, but as I've worked on my research and I've talked with all of these older adults, it has really fostered this interest in this area as well, because it has just helped me identify really, just commonalities across humans. We all want the same thing. We all want to be able to enjoy life, and that doesn't change just because you're aging. So being able to support this aging population has definitely become more of an interest of mine over the last few years.
Thank you. And Bomin?
I spent several years designing nursing homes and public housing and hospital spaces for older adults before I started my degree. And a lot of the times I felt I struggled a lot with this idea of what it meant for older adults to live in a healthy and successful environment. But I think we're finally getting to a point in our fields where we are talking about beyond age segregation and beyond sort of our stereotypical idea of what it means to be an older adult, especially in this country. So I really just wanted to make sure that we're coming from a significantly more critical analysis of what it means to live successfully and live a beautiful lifestyle as we age.
Great. Thank you all.
Thank you. People's Choice winner? Audrey is the People's Choice winner. Congratulations, Audrey. This is a great honor. It's a $500 award and a chance to do your presentation again at the Friedman Lecture. Congratulations.
Thank you. I'm looking forward.
And then the Judge's Choice, Meghan. Meghan McDarby. Congratulations, Meghan. The Judge's
Thank
Choice,
you.
a $1,000 check and the chance to present at the Friedman Lecture. Well done.